I've said it once, I've said it probably 1,000 times, and I'll probably continue saying it 1,000 times, but RPGs are my favorite genre of game. There are just hundreds upon hundreds of titles that have stood the test of time and become forever loved. But while they are beloved, some of those said classes can be pretty tough to return to. Sup y'all, it's me, Crimson Rosso, and we're going to talk about 5 RPGs that are pretty hard to go back to. Now, I want to say that a lot of these games are not bad by any means at all. They just have some mechanics that have aged pretty poorly, or there is just a more improved option available for many people that I would recommend instead. With that little introduction done, let's get started. You know, it's kind of crazy how in the 90s, Pokemon was just this new fad that had appeared, and it wasn't really one of the most biggest things. It was something that a lot of people thought was just going to disappear in about 3 to 5 years. It's kind of crazy to imagine it now as probably the single most financially successful franchise in the world. Give and take the recent games and their questionable quality. It's still just kind of crazy to think back and remember that these games started as just simple games on the Game Boy Color. Just some simple, fun games where you could catch and trade Pokemon with friends. AKA, they were the perfect playground games to bring during school while you guys ate Lunchables and yelled about how your fucking friend used that goddamn Alakazam because his brother bought blue. Sorry, fucking Timmy lives in my head rent-free with that bullshit. But while they are worthy of a lot of respect, Pokemon Red and Blue, they don't hold up the best nowadays, if I'm being totally honest. First and foremost, these games are sluggish as hell. Like, I've played a ton of retro games in my time, but OG Pokemon moves so slowly, it's frustrating. And then, of course, there's all of the really frustrating aspects of the game, like having to constantly swap PC boxes if you want to catch more Pokemon. Inventory space having a limit, that pissed me off, really pisses me off now, on how much you can hold, and legendary Pokemon needing a fucking status effect to even try to catch them. If you are ever interested in going back to the Kanto region to relive the original region, I would recommend just getting Fire Red and Leaf Green if you're interested. And if you do want to play these OGs just to see how they are, get an emulator and speed up the gameplay, because you're going to need it. Trust me. I love Persona 3. It's probably, still to this day, not only one of my favorite PS2 games, but probably one of the best RPGs I've ever played. And even to this day, I recommend RPG fans everywhere give it a playthrough at least once. It's got a fantastic story, its pacing is excellent, and the gameplay is fun to an extent, and I love pretty much all of the characters. So why is it so hard to go back to? Well, I said to an extent with the gameplay for a massive reason. You see, unlike a lot of other turn-based RPGs, Persona 3 makes the choice of not letting you have any control whatsoever over your party members. The only way you can control them is by using the options menu to choose what your party members should focus on. Examples being focusing on healing and support, or having them focus on attacking. It's certainly interesting and it can work for sure, but it is held back by the AI of your party members being some of the dumbest motherfuckers I've ever seen in my life. Sometimes they will heal people who barely need it, casting spells that aren't needed instead of just using spells to kill the enemy. If you played this game, you probably know which party member does this the most, Mitsuru. It gets insanely frustrating to put up with when so much of this game is combat focused. Now don't even get me started on how they will pull this shit with boss fights. If you are interested in playing this game, I'd recommend just emulating it and adding in a mod that lets you control your party members. I'd say get Portable, but let's just say I've got some problems with Portable and I'll address that one day, don't you worry. You know, outside of the top 10 GBA games videos I made a while back, I don't think I really mentioned how much I love the Castlevania action RPGs. They are such fun games that seem simple at the forefront, but hold several amounts of depth when looking under the hood, which is actually something Circle the Moon does pretty well with its card-based ability system. Hell, the game itself isn't really bad either in terms of both gameplay and story as well. So why is it on here then? Well, it comes down for a few things. For one, the graphics. I'm not usually one who says graphics hurt gameplay, as I am a fan of several games that have had really bad graphics. But man, does Circle use some of the most boring levels and color designs to look at in the entire handheld set of games. Everything is so dry and just freaking murky that you just feel so uninterested to look at or explore. It's just such a boring level design. Another problem comes down to the gameplay. I've mentioned that it's not the worst, sure, but man, it is dull. The gameplay feels very much like a get it done and out the window or whatever that saying is feeling to it. Honestly, it wouldn't be so noticeable and so easy to criticize if there weren't two other games on the GBA that handle the aspects of the action RPG formula much better than Circle does. Hell, Harmony of Dissonance does everything better in my personal opinion, even if Harmony of Dissonance itself has some pretty big flaws. And that's what hurts it more than anything. The simple question of why play this game when Harmony of Dissonance and especially Aria of Sorrow do it so much better in every possible way. Man, this game was a mindfuck come true when it released for Dragon Ball fans like myself. A full-on Dragon Ball action RPG where you get to play as the main man himself, Goku, as you experience the beginning of Z all the way up to one of, if not the most iconic battles in shonen history of Goku versus Frieza. The game on its release was able to sell over 1 million copies. And how does it hold up? I could just say big oof and end it like that, but that's not how I want to do this. Kinda. The game, while a novel and awesome thing when it dropped, holds up insanely poorly. Character models and pictures look like fan art than the actual characters themselves. Combat is filled with enemies that take either way too many hits to kill, especially with those weak-ass attack animations. And leveling becomes an absolute chore late game due to the insane experience requirements. Like, if I recall correctly, it goes by like doubling, so it can take literal hours unless you aren't at the very end game when you want to level things up. And whoo boy, the less I say about how ridiculous the bosses are in this game, the better. If you want a Dragon Ball action RPG that delivers on several fronts, I'd say just go play Legacy of Goku 2, Boo's Fury, or even DBZ Kakarot. They all hold up an infinite amount of times better than Legacy of Goku 1 does. Okay, to be perfectly honest, I was originally going to put the first Dark Souls game on here due to several of the game's controls and camera not aging super well. But then I remembered how Dark Souls 2 has those problems and more, and just decided to go with that one instead. Now I do want to state that, well, I don't really think this game is all that bad. Yep, it's got some massive problems, and a lot of those design decisions can leave players with less of an urge to return to it, unlike the original or 3. The main one, of course, being the permanent health shortening. For those who have never picked up a Souls game, one of the main concepts is facing powerful enemies and bosses, and learning the patterns in order to overcome them, mainly through dying over and over and over again. And Dark Souls 2 kinda spits in the face of that by constantly giving you a stacking debuff that can only be removed by using the effigy item, basically killing the main point of the games. Another problem this game had was in its difficulty balancing. Souls games are naturally pretty tough games that usually get easier the more you go in. And Dark Souls 2 does not do that. It is a roller coaster of either piss levels of easy or controller breaking hard that's not really all that fun to constantly repeat playthroughs of it. It kinda sucks though, because 2 has some very interesting levels and some great PvP gameplay. Everything else just kinda makes the game not fun to go back to in comparison to its younger and older brothers, if we're going with some wacky logic here. Because I like wacky logic anyways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the list. This was honestly a lot of fun to just make this kind of content and give myself a return to form for what I used to do. so definitely expect more of this in the future. While working on this video, I came up with a few ideas actually that I may start putting out into scripts soon. Maybe with different numbers than just 5 or 10 like I'm used to. Maybe a video with 7. Ooh la la. If you want to see that, do me a solid and drop a like and a sub. And if there were any games that you think should be on here that are also pretty hard to go back to, that you still love, let me know in the comments. I've always enjoyed talking with y'all. With that said, see y'all next time.